Hey guys, it's McGann, and with Adventure Time winding down to an end, I'm here to piece together as much of the history of Ooh, or rather the history of the world, I guess, that I can. Adventure Time is one of those really deep shows where you jump into the middle of a long history and watch things slowly make sense, well, kinda, because every time they peel back a layer and give you an answer, you walk away with 1,000 new questions. So getting the timeline in order is really important, and it seems to be implied that the war over the Candy Kingdom will be the series finale, so we might not get much more relevant backstory for any other characters. I don't know that for sure, but I feel confident enough to publish this right before the series ends, so we shall find out if I'm wrong together. Now, I believe the opening of Adventure Time gives us a small overview of how things went. First, there was destruction with mass wars everywhere, the remnants of which are seen all over Ooh today. Next, the Ice King formed, which makes sense because we know the Ice King used to be Simon, who existed back when the humans were at their peak. Then the Candy Kingdom was made, and finally we have the days of Finn and Jake. But to go further in depth, and hopefully I'm not missing any details, we can go back as far in the timeline as the Lich's words of,
"Before there was time, before there was anything, there was nothing. And before there was nothing, there were monsters."
which implies that the initial darkness of the universe was the birth of the Lich King. That's a little hard to date. The universe is about 13.8 billion years old, but we're talking before that, which could mean 14 billion years ago, or it could mean 1 trillion years ago. It was a long, long time ago. We can at least agree on that. Then the history of this crown helps us get a little more perspective. In Season 6, Episode 24, entitled Evergreen, we're shown how the Ice King's crown came to exist, and this is clearly in the age of dinosaurs. Specifically, we see Brontosaurus and pterodactyls, which lived at the same time roughly 150 million years ago. Now later, Patience St. Pym unintentionally explains that episode as an incarnation of the elementals Ice, Fire, Candy, and Slime, which covers why we have a few advanced-minded inhabitants among dinosaurs. But if we look closely, these incarnations are very interesting because we see the flame elemental evolve from a crustacean and the ice elemental came from a bird type creature, which is funny because scientists now believe that dinosaurs, or at least some dinosaurs, had feathers. I can't even guess at who the slime and candy elementals used to be, but because their essence gets reincarnated every generation, the samurai style gear raises a lot of questions that I cannot answer. Well, I could say that this was the future and some magical rift in time brought the crown to the past, which actually would explain why Simon and Betty have so much trouble identifying the crown when they study that stuff for a living. Well, for now at least, let's take it at face value so we can get a timeline. It goes Lich's birth, the creation of Ice King's crown. The next timeline point I want to try and uncover is the event that blew this giant hole in the earth. While the Mushroom War is highly suspected to have caused this, I don't think that's right. I believe that the Mushroom War was just the final war where people started nuking each other and many humans died off or mutated as a result. If you pay attention, you'll notice that the bomb associated to ending the world goes off in the Farm World timeline after Finn wished that the Lich never existed. And I guess in context here, the Lich was always around since he existed before the universe, but if the Lich didn't exist, the detonation of that bomb was so dark and evil that it rebirthed the Lich. Also, Lich means dead body, so the deaths that occurred when the bomb went off may explain the Lich's appearance too. At least that's my interpretation, and I'm sticking to it. Anyways, the point is that the big bomb that alternate Simon died to stop does blow up in Farm World, and the explosion isn't the end of the world. So I suspect that the crater we see in the planet was caused by the 1,000-year comet, and it just didn't hit as hard in the farm world timeline. The episode Evergreen tells us that the comets are not always a big deal, but the one that caused all of this was massive. Probably the same comet that Finn used to be in a past life. Otherwise, I don't know why that part of his history was worth mentioning. Although it's kind of crazy to believe that something big enough to put that kind of hole in the earth didn't destroy every other living thing on the planet, but I don't know. I'm gonna call Cartoon Magic to cover that one. So, a little over 1,000 years ago, that comet hit, probably towards the end of the Mushroom War, and those various disruptions caused some humans to become mutants who eventually infected or evolved into other things like wizards or vampires. I mean, we do see quite a few wizards in the series who look human or almost human, yet there's no magical people on Founders Island. And it also would have been around this time, about 1,000 years ago, that Simon and Betty were living their normal human lives. And because Simon ends up with Marcy in a place that looks like a city was nuked, I think that was the bomb that didn't go off in Farm World. So my guess is that Simon knew Marceline before the bomb hit. And because Marcy's mom was clearly hooked up with Hunson at one point, that means the mom had to have some connection to dark magic, which probably means she worked with Simon and Betty as a magical researcher. So Marcy and Simon were connected before the world went crazy. I'd also guess that the bomb that went off here was the same bomb that we see patients running away from, which would also mean that the Mother Gum is what happened to the last candy elemental after his city was bombed. Notice it was bombed with the demons flying around, and it wasn't a comet that hit here. And we see the buildings exploded, but not the entire Earth. So this bomb went off shortly before the event that blew up a third of the planet, which leads me to suspect that some humans were smart enough to get out of Dodge when the war broke out, and those people began to colonize in space, which would easily connect us to bravest warriors. Since technology obviously suffered after the world went kaboom, that means yes, the humans who left Earth had to have done so before the Mushroom War started, so over 1,000 years ago. Going back to the Mother Gum, it was oozing around right after a major catastrophe, and that's when Simon ended up trying to rescue little Marceline. Then, after Princess Bubblegum and Nettie were born, the Mother Gum must have dried up or died, because PB was now the new incarnation of the candy elemental. That's why we never see the Mother Gum in present times. After it budded a new form, it no longer needed to exist. I guess it could also be that Nettie was the new candy elemental, and that would explain why PB went kinda nutty when she got her powers enhanced. But I doubt we're gonna see enough of Nettie again to ever confirm or deny this theory. So then it would have been 800 or 900 years ago that PB created her fake family out of non-sentient gum, and then moved forward creating the Candy Kingdom. And somewhere in between the bomb making the Mother Gum and Bonnibel's family creations, we have Marceline's story. And since Marcy ages like a normal person in her half-human, half-demon natural state, that means that roughly 990 years ago, we have the Staked storyline where Marceline was hunting the vampires that sprung up after all the world changes. Also, if you never caught it, humans started wearing animal hats to cover their necks and stop vampires from draining their blood, so vamps must have been a severe problem after the Mushroom Wars. And I think the people that Marceline sent off on the boat were the same people that began Founders Island. After the humans left, the abandoned land masses and creatures continued to change, evolve, and mutate to the characters we see in Ooh today. The fact that Lady Rainicorn and Jake can have babies shows that crossbreeding runs wild, making all sorts of strange creatures. Not to mention, people like PB can make anything sentient. So yeah, it's just a weird world out there now, and most humans can't understand it. But all of that leads us to Minerva and Martin's storyline, roughly 18 to 20 years ago, and then Finn's adoption by Joshua about 17 years ago. Then we have Cuber, who shows us the Graybles. Cuber is probably over 1,000 years in the future, after the next comet hits and wipes everyone out. Not only is this hinted by the episode Graybles 1000 Plus, which implies this is 1,000 or more years into the future, but the planet is deserted when Cuber comes through, so either everyone on Earth has abandoned ship, or all life has died off. If the latter is correct, it could also have something to do with a change in Sweet Pea's nature. Once that kid hits teenage mood swings and the Lich fully comes out, they're all doomed. Finally, if you want to believe that Evergreen and the original Gunter were from the future and that crown found its way back due to time travel, that would go here. And that's the best of my ability to figure out the timeline history of Ooh. It might not be reality, but theories are more fun. Well, that's all I have for now, but this video's not quite over yet. I get a lot of comments that say, do a theory on this topic, but I've already done those theories. So please consider going to my main channel page and clicking on the video tab so that way you can see everything I've done. You will probably find a lot of things you like that you never even knew that I posted. I want to let you know that I also have 2 other channels, Say Halo Goodbye Gaming and the Fanily Family Vlogs. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed enough to hit subscribe and share. I can use all the help I can get to let other people know that this channel exists. And if you made it this far, leave me a comment that says something like, hey, I made it to the end, and then let me know what kind of videos you want to see in the future. I can't make any promises, but the more people that request something, the more I can look into it. Okay, well, I love you. I'll see you in the next video.